There are not a lot of two-term presidents in recent American history. Before President Obama, there was George W. Bush. He, of course, had 2 terms. Bill Clinton, of course. Ronald Reagan. But before Ronald Reagan, you have to go all the way back to Eisenhower to get to a president who served 2 whole terms. And so if you look at these 4, the only presidents in the last 30, actually, Eisenhower should be Obama there. If you look at these presidents over the last 30 years to have served 2 terms, obviously they're pretty wildly different as presidents. They served in different times. They've been viewed very differently in terms of how they will go down in history. But in this rather elite club, these few people who have had 2 terms, all of them so far have had the same thing happen to them at the end of their presidency. They all, in their last 2 years in office, had to deal with the House and the Senate being in control of the opposite party. Ronald Reagan's second midterms were in 1986. He, of course, was a Republican. In his second midterm, the Democrats held on to the House, and his Republican Party lost the Senate. George W. Bush was also a Republican. In his second midterm in 2006, his Republican Party lost the House and lost the Senate. Bill Clinton, of course, was a Democrat. In his second midterm election in 1998, his Democratic Party did not lose the Senate majority because it was not theirs to lose, but they stayed in the minority in both the Senate and in the House. Every 2-term president of the modern era has had to serve the last 2 years of his presidency with both houses of Congress being controlled by the other party. George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Ronald Reagan, they all had wildly different presidencies. But this is what happens to second-term presidencies every time. At least over the course of my lifetime, this is how it goes. And before, even if you do want to go back further than that, it was true of Eisenhower as well. This is now proven to be almost a historic inevitability about what happens to presidents when they get to their second term and their second midterm election. The other guys are in charge of Congress. Must be a huge drag if you're president to know that's coming, right? But although that is the history, nobody knows for sure if that is going to happen to President Obama in tomorrow's elections as well. Republicans certainly will hold the House. Nobody yet knows if they will take the Senate. Republicans seem very confident that they will take the Senate. If the Republican Party this year keeps up with history, then the Republicans will be right in their confidence. They will take the Senate. Look at this. Since World War II, in midterm elections, the president's party loses an average of 4 Senate seats in each midterm election. If, however, you focus in on just the second midterms, just midterms when a president is in his 6th year of office, the number of Senate seats that the president's party loses on average is 5.8. Let's round to 6. So if the Republican Party performs at historical average levels in tomorrow's election, the Republican Party tomorrow will take 6 Senate seats from the Democrats. And, coincidentally, 6 Senate seats happens to be the exact number of seats they need to take from the Democrats in order to take over control of the United States Senate. So all they have to do is hit the historical average, and they will get what they want. If they don't, oof, they'll have some explaining to do. Subpar. Right, so that context is not about any one race. That doesn't tell you what's going to happen to any individual candidate tomorrow or in any individual state tomorrow. That's just the historical precedent for what happens in elections like the one that we are about to have. And if past is prologue and tomorrow does follow that very clear historic pattern, well, then the next thing to consider is what happens once Republicans do have control of the United States Senate as well as the United States House of Representatives. If they have complete control of Congress, what are they going to want to do with it? No idea. Texas Senator Ted Cruz did a Washington Post interview today where he said he's already not sure about whether he will vote for Mitch McConnell as majority leader for the Republicans in the Senate. Woohoo! They're already fighting over the booty when they haven't even raided the castle yet. One thing does seem clear, though. If the Republicans do meet history's expectations and they do take complete control of Congress tomorrow, well, okay. This is the legislative record, the quantitative legislative record, the record of achievement for what is known as the Do-Nothing Congress. After World War II, 1948, Harry Truman branded the Congress that year the Do-Nothing Congress. You know that famous picture of Harry Truman gleefully holding up the newspaper, Dewey Defeats Truman? That was an amazing headline because the Chicago Daily Tribune newspaper got the election results wrong. But other than that newspaper screwing up that headline, do you remember anything else about Thomas Dewey? Are you even sure that his first name was Thomas? No, nobody remembers anything about Thomas Dewey because Harry Truman didn't even really bother running against him. Harry Truman ran against the Do-Nothing Congress when he ran for re-election that year. He basically ignored the Republican candidate. Truman ran against the Do-Nothing Congress, and he won. And that Congress in 1947 and 1948 will forever be known as the Do-Nothing Congress. It's a historic benchmark in our nation for the failure of a political institution, right? For the failure to act. That Congress did nothing. For comparison's sake, so on the left side of your screen there, that's the legislative record of the Do-Nothing Congress, 1948. The 112th Congress there, yeah, that's the legislative record of the last Congress we just had. They say there's nothing new under the sun. Bullpucky. We are, in our lifetime, setting new records for Congress doing less than it has ever done before. USA, USA. So that's the Do-Nothing Congress. Then right next to it, that's the last Congress, which is officially on record as the least productive Congress in the history of Congress. And now this, is the record of the current Congress that we're in right now. The current Congress, their record so far. We might even beat the record, which we set last year. Congress has never done less in the history of the United States of America than it has done since the Republicans took control of the House in 2010. If the Republican Party also takes the Senate, though, I think it is reasonable to expect that that record of doing absolutely nothing will change. Republicans in control of the two houses of Congress will probably find a way to agree with each other enough to pass things, because they will be able to do it with all Republican votes. Once they can act in Washington without having to deal with the Democrats at all, my guess is they probably will start passing stuff. Democrats will not be able to stop them in the House or in the Senate, barring the filibuster. If the Republicans take control of both of those bodies, Democrats are not going to be able to stop them in Congress at all. They will leave it up to President Obama himself. President Obama alone will be the counterweight to the all-Republican Congress if the Republicans take the Senate tomorrow. And that is going to be a lot of fun to cover. When the same thing that may happen to President Obama tomorrow happened to George W. Bush in 2006, when the Democrats took control of both houses of Congress in the 6th year of his presidency. George W. Bush, by that point in his presidency, had only vetoed one bill over the entire time that he'd been president. After 2006, though, after the opposite party took control of both the House and the Senate, he issued 11 vetoes in his last 2 years in office. Heading into tomorrow's elections, President Obama so far in this presidency has only vetoed 2 pieces of legislation, neither of which are things that anybody remembers. One of them was basically a typo by Congress. Congress passed a stopgap thing because they thought they were not going to be able to pass a spending bill, but then they passed a spending bill too. It was just kind of a screw-up. It was a non-event. Only one of those things could be law, so President Obama vetoed one of them. The headline in the New York Times the day that President Obama issued his very first veto as president was this: veto from Obama does not stop presses. It was not the most important thing. The only other thing he has vetoed since he's been president had to do with who, I'm kidding you, I'm not kidding you. It had to do with who is allowed to notarize your mortgage documents. Now, no offense to notaries or to mortgage documents, but that veto was not exactly an earth-shattering political move either. Right? For all of the politics and the political tactics and the controversies and the different types of political excitement that we have had during the Obama years, we have had precisely 0 excitement over presidential vetoes. It has only happened twice so far in this entire presidency, and neither time did it even make the front section of the paper when he did it. Non-events both times. But if history is right about what's going to happen in tomorrow's election, that whole veto thing is about to get a lot more exciting. We're about to have a whole big new thing to be controversial and exciting in our politics. So looking ahead to how tomorrow's election may or may not change your life, if you are interested in politics, you are about to have a lot more Barack Obama in your politics if the Republicans do take the Senate and if they can get it together to pass legislation both through the House and the Senate so it gets to President Obama's desk. President Obama's desk is going to become a much more interesting place than it has been since Congress stopped doing anything 4 years ago. So that is an exciting prospect. The other thing that we know is going to happen after tomorrow's election is that President Obama is planning on doing stuff without Congress. Now, President Obama has said that after the election, he will take executive action without Congress on the issue of immigration. And if you want to know what else is going to happen, right, if history is right and the Republicans have a great day tomorrow, if you want to know what else that is going to mean in your life and in our political life as a nation, our friends at Fox News are already so excited about the prospect of President Obama acting on the issue of immigration that they have started planning out loud for what they are going to do in response, what they're going to do in Congress if Republicans get control of both houses of Congress starting tomorrow, and then President Obama acts without them. They're already talking about what they're going to do in response. I don't want to give it away, but its initials are impeachment. They're already talking about impeachment.
His White House has basically said he is going to, right after the election, midterms, he is going to issue an executive action. In this talk, there was a big story in the Wall Street Journal this weekend that he might take action that would delay deportation, in effect, give a permanent path not to citizenship but legalization to up to 4 million people. I promise you, if he does that, if he by executive action goes against Congress and legalizes 4 million people who are in this country illegally, there is going to be a firestorm on Capitol Hill. You're going to see calls for impeachment.
Impeachment? They're already calling for it. They're already planning on it.
If the Republicans do capture the Senate, there's no more excuses about impeachment. See, what we've heard so far is, well, we can't do that because we could never get it through the Senate. The House could impeach him, but the Senate would never convict. It would just be a waste of time. Well, if they have control of the Senate, it won't be. So we'll see how they deal with this post-election if they happen to win the control of the Senate.
That's Tony Perkins from the Family Research Council, the social conservative group, over at WorldNet Daily, your source for Where's the Birth Certificate T-shirts and bumper stickers. It's our old friend at WorldNet Daily, Tom Tancredo, banging the drum for impeachment there as well. Quote, given the likely new political circumstances post-November 4th, impeachment is no longer impractical. So on Fox News, on right-wing talk radio, in the conservative blog world, they've already got it in motion as best as they can. Tomorrow they take the Senate. The day after that, they start working toward impeachment. Remember this summer, Republicans in the House came up with a plan that was supposed to drain some of the energy away from the calls on the right to start impeaching President Obama for something? House Speaker John Boehner said he would file a lawsuit against President Obama instead of filing impeachment proceedings against him. This was essentially supposed to drain the excitement, right? This is supposed to divert energies away from impeachment into this lawsuit against President Obama instead. Since then, that supposed lawsuit has never been filed. 2 different law firms have now quit after being hired by the House Speaker to bring that case. They just didn't ever do anything with it. And the fire on the right and in the conservative media and on Fox News to impeach President Obama for something sometime soon, that fire on the right is burning hotter than I think the Beltway realizes right now. Nobody knows for sure if the Republicans are going to take the Senate tomorrow. History, if nothing else, suggests that they will. But then what? As you can see tonight, I'm at a different desk. We're at the big new desk. We're at the big new set. Lots of headroom. We're all set up for election night tomorrow night. It's going to be a big night no matter what happens. But the best we can tell from this vantage point is that the next 2 years are going to be not just a big deal, they're probably going to be a big mess, which makes the news business a very fun place to work. Joining us now is Andrea Mitchell, host of Andrea Mitchell Reports here on MSNBC. Andrea, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
So,
nice digs, Rachel.
Thank you. I don't think I get to keep them.
Oh, well.
We'll see. This election might go until January.
Exactly.
It is a little bit, I feel like heading into these elections that there are 2 interesting things that I can't get my head around. And one of them is that it feels like it's very close. You look at things like the generic ballot, you look at economic data, you look at the fundamentals, you look at how many races are considered to be a tie or within the margin of error.
Absolutely.
All the turnout stuff. It seems like things are very close. History tells us it won't be close. it's going to be a blowout and Republicans will win. How do you approach something like this?
Very, very cautiously, because it is close, according to all the polling. Polling can be wrong, but in every place we look, all the data show that it's very close. We don't see signs of this Republican wave, especially in the NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, which now shows it neck and neck in terms of people who say we want a Democratic Congress and people who say we want a Republican Congress. And our best thinking in looking at this is that people are so upset, so turned off by the deadlock, the gridlock, the argument, the commercials, the money that's been spent, that they are angry at the incumbents. Many of them are Democrats, and certainly the White House is an incumbent Democrat. But they're also angry at Congress, which includes a House that's Republican. And they really aren't decided, or haven't decided up until now, which way to express that anger. Do they stay home? In which case, it basically advantages the people who are committed voters. In midterms, that's often older voters, more Republican voters. Or does it inspire the base? Are the Democrats getting people angry enough and fearful enough about what they say will happen if the Republicans take over, that the young people will come out? And we've got early voting, and you've got a key state, Colorado, which is mail-in voting.
For the first time.
For the first time. We don't know, in a really important, very close election in North Carolina, what kind of voter intimidation is going to take place. That's been ground zero, as you have reported, more importantly than anyone else. You've done all the homework there. What's going to happen when people try to vote?
I feel like looking ahead, I feel like especially looking at previous two-term presidents, they all had to deal with having Congress controlled by the opposite party. That's part of what makes it feel like a historic inevitability that the Republicans are going to go there. Is there any way to look ahead toward what changes in Washington if the Republicans do take control? I mean, policymaking, no policy is being made in Congress anyway.
Right.
Presumably, no policy making will be made in Congress controlled by the Republicans on both sides, because President Obama will veto anything that they want to pass that he disagrees with. Is there any way to predict, either based on history or based on the dynamics right now in Washington, what those last 2 years would be like and how they'd be different from how things are now? Well,
if you look at Ronald Reagan and you look at Bill Clinton, both of whom were struggling in their second terms with scandal. One, impeachment, sex scandal, the other, Iran-Contra. Bad scandals. Reagan's presidency was almost going down. It was saved by Howard Baker and other people who came in that second term as new chiefs of staff. But if you look at them, they didn't have to deal with an opposition party which was as controlled by the wings as this Republican Party. It was pre-Tea Party, it was pre-Ted Cruz, and there was an accommodation by the opposition party and the second-term president. Ronald Reagan got stuff done. Bill Clinton got important stuff done. And they were able to work across
even post-scandal, even as wounded presidents, even with opposite party control in the Congress.
So the question now is which Republican Party, if they were to win, is going to be in charge? You already saw Ted Cruz saying today in Alaska, I'm not sure I would vote for Mitch McConnell. Does Mitch McConnell have to deal with presidential candidates among his colleagues who are taking shots from all sides? Is it going to be Rand Paul, who said on Meet the Press he thinks things can be done, even as he is clearly ramping up for a presidential run? Is it going to be the accommodationists who are like Bob Corker and others, Lamar Alexander, who might try to reach a middle and do something on tax reform, do something on trade policy that, ironically, President Obama has tried to do, but Democrats have stopped him? Or is it going to be a divided Republican Party in three parts? Candidates, very right-wing Tea Party members who are not running for president, and more moderate people who want to prove that Republicans can get something done, can govern, to position themselves for 2016.
This is going to be fascinating. Seeing them already fighting over the spoils before they've obtained them shows me how much fun this is.
And one quick thing, take a look at some of the chairmanships, and that is a key.
Oh, yeah. In terms
John
of
McCain is going to take over Armed Services. Jim Imhoff is going to take over the environment. He's a climate change denier.
Yeah. Greatest hoax ever perpetrated on mankind, he says.
So you've got a very interesting agenda.
Andrea Mitchell, host of Andrea Mitchell Reports, weekdays at noon Eastern here on MSNBC. Andrea, I can't wait to help cover this with you. Thank you very much.
And I have a big guest tomorrow on my show.
Ooh, who do you have?
Oh, Rachel Maddow.
Really? I better get up in time to see that. All right, just a few hours away now, Civics Geeks. For our wall-to-wall coverage tomorrow night, MSNBC is lucky enough to retain the services of the great Steve Kornacki and his amazing wall. Please stay with us.